Welcome back to Trots TV. It's time for another edition of On Trial, and we're going to start with a trial from Wagga on the 2nd of February. And it's actually a horse that was beaten in the first trial. This horse is called Mr. Red Shoes. Now, there isn't a lot in his form. I think he's had the 13 starts for one victory, but his last 4 starts have been 10th, 9th, 9th, 10th. And he's now got a new trainer. Sean Snudden has taken over the training of Mr. Red Shoes, and Corey Bell drove him in this trial. Now, I think there's, he's not going to go through and win 7 or 8 races in quick succession. He may not even get there in his career, but I do think in the Riverina, placed right by Sean, there's definitely a couple of wins in him, especially if he can race like this. Now, in the trial, he showed pretty good gate speed. It took him a while to find the front until they moved into the back straight. So it took him probably a little bit longer than Corey Bell would have liked, but once he got to the front, he was able to back the speed off, and he set a pretty slow tempo through the first half of the trial, and then started to wind it up from the 800 metre mark. He ran through the last 800 in 59.1. He ran the last 400 in 28.6. Now, the overall time of 22.9 just gives you some idea on how slow they were going through the early stages. And the horse that actually comes off his back, Annie's Desire, wins the trial. So Annie's Desire's won a few races in its career. And off the trial performance of Mr. Red Shoes, I do think that there's going to be a couple of wins in this horse, especially early on in the preparation. Wouldn't be surprised to see it with the current form that it's got. And you know, maybe because it's in the Sean Snudden stable, it'll start a little bit shorter. But, you know, there might be some value the first time the horse does go to the races. It was beaten in this trial, obviously. So just keep that in mind. A horse by the name of Mr. Red Shoes coming out of the trials, trial number 1 at Wagga back on the 2nd of February. Now, the next set of trials I want to go to is the Newcastle trials, and this was the following night. This was Wednesday, the 3rd of February. And Shane Tritton, who has since made the move to Menangle. He's moved his entire team. I think he moved 18 horses on the Friday. He moved the rest of his horses on Sunday. So all of his team now down at Menangle. But I think this mare is set for a pretty good career down in Sydney, especially if she can show this sort of gate speed and race like this. Her name is Summertime Lizzie. She's another one of these former Kiwis, a Kiwi mare. And of course, Shane and Zach Cornell found Arms of an Angel, and she'll go around in the Chariots of Fire this Saturday night. I'm not saying that Summertime Lizzie is a chariot sort of horse, but this horse does look to have a few wins in her. She's a C1. She's arrived from New Zealand as a C1, and she was driven typical Tritton fashion. She was driven aggressively in the early stages. She worked to the front, and then she was allowed to relax until about the 800 metre mark. And I think Roy Roots Jr. did the driving in the trial. As soon as he got to the 800 metre mark, he put his foot flat to the floor and made the rest of them chase, and he got out with a big margin, as we see a lot of Shane's horses do at the trials. And in the end, the horse won by something like 22 metres, but wasn't pushed out in the straight, was allowed to go to the line under its own steam. So no surprise to see this mare win a couple very quickly. Might charge through to a C4 before it tastes defeat here in Australia. Overall, the time was 156.3. That's obviously very strong. 56.5 the last 800 metres, and up the straight in 28.6. And she looks a Menangle horse through and through with that speed she's got, and the speed she showed from the 800 metre mark to the 400 metre mark in this trial. So there's another one to follow out of the Newcastle trials on the 3rd. That is Summertime Lizzie. Now, a trial from Menangle on Friday, and this was trial number 1, the Trotters trial, and the horse is called Bacardi Hurricane. Now, plenty of people would know about this horse. He's only lightly raced. He's had the 3 starts. He's won 2 of them. The time that he was defeated, there was actually a big bet for him with a tab.com.au fixed. So there's obviously some confidence about this trotter, and the way that he trialled against a much better performed mare in Paris Pepperell at stablemate suggests that Bacardi Hurricane is going to win plenty more races for trainer Jared Alchin. Wasn't asked to leave the gate, settled 3rd in the field of 3, and then didn't move until about the 600 metre mark, and then Paris Pepperell and Bacardi Hurricane singled out, and they got a long way in front of the 3rd horse. But what I really like about this lightly raced trotter is his turn of foot, because the final quarter was 26.5, and his last 600 metres would have been really quick as well, because that's where he took off, and he was put into the race or into the trial at that time. So I think Bacardi Hurricane is definitely a horse we need to be following going in the trotting ranks in Sydney. The overall time, nothing crash hot, 2:1.8. Last 800 was 57.5, and as mentioned, that last 400 in 26.5. But Bacardi Hurricane is a trotter going places, I think, after winning its first couple and then tasting defeat. It's ready to come back to the races and win early on, and I'd say win a fair few races this campaign. So they're the horses going on trial this week. Of course, from the Wagga Trials, Mr. Red Shoes. Don't think he's any star, but I think he can win. He can definitely pick up a race pretty soon, and his form's very, very ordinary with the 4 duck eggs next to his name. We then put Summertime Lizzie on trial for Shane Tritton. Horse trialled at Newcastle, would now be stabled in Sydney. And also the horse from Menangle, and that is Bacardi Hurricane. They're the horses going on trial this week on Trots TV.